try to let Vijay sleep. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Padajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Padajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Mr. Pad Paramahamsa, Pravadikacharya, Ashtotar Shri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Pravadikacharya, Ashtotar Shri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. I thought you were going to be late, Ed. Oh, this is not late. We haven't even started. You said 7:30. Anyway, good. All right, Krishna's mercy. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 14th day of October 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary, by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in Chapter 2 entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized, text 56 at the bottom of page 122. Okay. All right. Dukeshvana vignamana Sukeshu vigataspaha Vitaragabaya krodha Stitadhi munuruchyate Dukeshvana vignamana Sukeshu vigataspaha Vitaragabaya krodha Stitadhi munuruchyate Dukkeshvanu vignamana Sukeshu vigataspaha Vitaragabaya krodha Stitadhi munuruchyate Dukkeshvanu vignamana Sukeshu vigataspaha Vitaraga bhaya krodha Sthitadhir munaruchyate Dukkeshvanudvignamana Sukesha vikataspaha Vitaraga bhaya krodha Sthitadhir munaruchyate Dukkeshvanudvignamana Sukesha vikataspaha Vitaragam bhaya krodha Chittadhi munuruchyate. Go ahead, Ed. Dukkeshvanudvignamana Sukeshu vikataspaha Vitaraga bhaya krodha Siddhadhi munuruchyate. Okay, word by words. Dukkeshu, in the threefold miseries, anudvignamanaha, without being agitated in mind. Sukeshu, in happiness, vigataspaha, without being interested. Vita, free from raga, attachment, bhaya, fear, krodha, and anger. Stitadihi, whose mind is steady. Munihi, a sage, uchite, is called. Translation. Krishna says to Arjuna, one who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. Purport. The word muni means one who can agitate his mind in various ways for mental speculation without coming to a factual conclusion. It is said that every muni has a different angle of vision, and unless a muni differs from other munis, he cannot be called a muni in the strict sense of the term. Na sa vrishir yasya matang na binnam. Mahabharata, Vanaparva 3:13, 117. But a Stitadhir muni, as mentioned herein by the Lord, is different from an ordinary muni. The Stitadhir muni is always in Krishna consciousness, for he has exhausted all his business of creative speculation. He is called Prashanta Nikshesa Manoratantara, Stotra Ratna 43. Or one who has surpassed the stage of mental speculations and has come to the conclusion that Lord Sri Krishna, or Vasudeva, is everything. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. He is called a muni fixed in mind. Such a fully Krishna conscious person is not at all disturbed by the onslaughts of the threefold miseries, for he accepts all miseries as the mercy of the Lord, thinking himself only worthy of more trouble due to his past misdeeds. And he sees that his miseries, by the grace of the Lord, are minimized to the lowest. Similarly, when he is happy, he gives credit to the Lord, thinking himself unworthy of the happiness. He realizes that it is due only to the Lord's grace that he is in such a comfortable condition and able to render better service to the Lord. And for the service of the Lord he is always daring and active and is not influenced by attachment or aversion. Attachment means accepting things for one's own sense gratification, and detachment or aversion is the absence of such sensual attachment. But one fixed in Krishna consciousness has neither attachment nor detachment, because his life is dedicated to the service of the Lord. Consequently, he is not at all angry even when his attempts are unsuccessful. Success or no success, a Krishna conscious person is always steady in his determination. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Shri Parampara. So I have to ask, where is our friend Alex tonight?
I kind of distracted. He had to take a shower, and I kind of...
Okay. All right. So this is a very rich verse and purport. First, some of the words here we may start to recognize. Udvigna. Udvigna, we know, Naiv Odvijay, Paradurate Vaitharanyas, this famous line from Prahlad's prayer. He's saying Udvijay, Udvigna is the same word, different form. I'm not disturbed by any means. Na eva udvijay, in any condition. And he proved it when his father tried to kill him in so many ways, and he remained undisturbed. Because I'm with you. Whenever I'm fully conscious of you, and whenever I want, I can chant your glories and immerse my mind in nectar, ecstasy. But I am disturbed by the sufferings of the non-devotees, and therefore I'm going to try to enlighten them. He uses the same word when he first starts teaching his father. Hiranyakashipu was unfortunate. He had the greatest teacher in his son, but he didn't recognize. He just became angry. So he asks his son the first time, "What did you learn today?" He puts him on his lap, very affectionate. And he says, Tat saramanye asodavaya dehinam sada sam udvigna diyama sadgrahat. Notice that word udvigna. He says, the best thing, sarumanye. Saru could mean the best, good, or bravo. When sometimes they already say saru saru. Have you ever heard that? Everyone thinks, oh, they recognize this person as a saru. Not really. Saru in that case means bravo. Very nice, very nice. Anyway, so he said, saru manye, that is the best thing I learned today, Father. In my opinion. He doesn't call him Father. He says, asura varya, best of the demons. Best for whom? In Prabhupada, dehinam, for the embodied soul, who is always sada samudvigna diyam. Not just udvigna, but samudvigna, completely disturbed in consciousness, diyam, because a sadgrahat. You're holding on to what is temporary for dear life. You see how desperate and doomed that is? We're holding on to in the second canto, first chapter, right at the beginning. Sukadeva Goswami is answering Maharaj Parikat's key question: what should I think about now that I'm about to die in 7 days? How should I control, direct my consciousness? And of course, it's a general question. What should anyone think when they're about to die? And it's a question for us because we don't know when we're going to die. So it's important for everyone. So in that series of verses, right at the beginning of the first chapter, second canto, he deals with this question of the conditioned soul and why he's so disturbed. And it's because he takes shelter of the temporary, impermanent. The fallible soldiers, Deha, Patra, Kalatradi, Shratma, Sainyeshu, Asatvapi. So the Atma Sainyeshu are soldiers that you try to defend against the impredations of the material energy. Atma Sainyeshu, but they're Asatsu. In other words, they're fallible. They can't do what you hope they can do. They can't defend you. So he begins with the body. That's the first thing. Got to have a healthy body, strong body, work out, go to the gym. Now they close the gyms, but I see them running. Everyone's running on the street. I'm doing my walk, and they're running. Mostly they're walking their dogs. But people understand. I got to keep the body healthy. Some people forget about it. And just try to enjoy and let the body go, and then they suffer. So deha apatya is children. Of course, the wife. That's called adishu, means etc. The larger family. The whole thing. And of course, wealth is described in more detail by Rishabdev. So this is what we have to get insurance policies of all kind. Insurance policy is based on this very powerful emotion of fear. Something may happen. What will happen to my children if I die prematurely? Let me sign up for $100,000, $200,000. Fire. So we'll burn the house down. Fire insurance, car insurance, health insurance. This insurance, that insurance. The fear doesn't go away, but you have the illusion of being ready for material energy. So anyway, so all of these things are temporary. The rest of the verse says, Tesham pramatto nidadam pashyan apina pashati. Tesham, these things he just mentioned, the body, the wife, the children, the wealth, fallible soldiers, even though this person maddened by the material energy, pramatta, Nunam pamatta kuradevi karma. Nidanam pasyan, seeing that it's not a mystery, and that everyone dies, that you can lose your money, that all these things are fallible, that they really can't ultimately protect you. Certainly, the body will fall one day, and then everything is lost. So even though knowing that and seeing that directly as you go through life, so many people you know die, you yourself get sick, or children even get. So you can't help but see with your own eyes the temporary nature, the fragile nature of your material condition. But even though seeing, you don't see. You don't want to see. You want to embrace this illusion of somehow being able to ward off the inevitable miseries and fears, dangers of this material world. So here, so Prahlad is saying this is the cause of this big disturbance, udvigna, for everybody. And sometimes it comes like in waves, some natural disaster, some war, some pandemic. The fear and anxiety index is way up, not just all over the world, in America, everywhere. I read the article, the mental health, and people, there's more suicides, opioids going in. People are taking shelter of fallible soldiers. So, the solution that Prahlad has, it says, give it all up. He's telling his father, who's just performed severe austerities to conquer the universe, and it's interesting. I just read that part where he, after he performs all of his austerities and he's standing on his toes and he's so austere, his body gets eaten by ants. He's keeping his life air alive in his bones, and the fire's coming out of it. And even though he's buried in an anthill, it's coming through and burning the whole universe. And finally, the demigods ask Brahma, "Please do something." And so he goes down and he sprinkles the little anthill with some water, and out comes powerful body like steel. He's got this. So he only doesn't have one thing. He doesn't have assurance of immortality. So he asks Brahma for that. Says, "Well, I can't give you immortality. I'm not immortal." So he tries to, think, well, okay, as long as I'm not killed by anything that flies, anything that you created, in the day and the night, inside, outside. He thinks he has this covered, but when Nrsimha comes, he meets all those qualifications, and he kills him. So what does Prahlad recommend? Fearlessly, the 5-year-old boy, supposedly very delicate, to this monstrous demon who's just conquered the universe. All the demigods except Brahma and Vishnu and Shiva were bowing down to him. Narada says even I was bowing down to him. So powerful. So here's little Prahlad, fearless, because he feels protection from Krishna. He says, Hitvatma patam griyamandakupam vanam gatoyad hadamashriyeta. The last thing, Hiranyakashipu expected to hear, or wanted to hear from his son, who he thought he was training up to be the next generation of demons. So he says, give it up. The materialistic household life, which is like a blind well, atmapatam, which obstructs the progress of the soul towards self-realization and going back to Godhead. Give that up. Give atmapatam, griyam andakupam, under a blind well of material household life. And then what do I do? Vanam gato, go to the forest, and it's understood in the commentators, go to Vrindavan. And what to do there? Hadamashriyeta, take shelter of Hari, Krishna. So he wasn't angry at Prahlad at that point, because he said someone must have taught him that, and he gives us a stare to Shanda and Amarka, the teachers, the sons of Shukracharya. And so we didn't tell him, we didn't teach him that, we don't know where he got it from. So they said, okay, well, you get it, you teach him so that he's not like that. So they immediately grill him, where did you learn it from? Anyway, it goes on, it's a wonderful pastime. But that it all keys on that word udvigna. And that udvigna is constantly there. That means constantly disturbed. This is one of the qualities of this age especially. That famous verse, Prayanopaishak Sabda. In this age, almost always, and that almost always, which is left out of the translation, although it was in there in Prabhupada's book, was taken out because, for some reason. But it really applies to all of them, all their qualities. Almost in every case, in this age, people don't live very long. They're lazy in the matter of self-realization. If they're lazy, means basically you just ignore it. Sumanda Matayo, if they're interested, they get misguided by so many misguiders. They're unfortunate because of this. Manda Bhagya, almost always unfortunate, almost always misguided. And Upadruta is another way of saying udvigna, and always disturbed in mind. So many different things. So it's a very difficult age to practice yoga. And that's why Krishna came as Lord Chaitanya to give us this easy method of chanting the holy name, which is so powerful that it can negate all of the bad qualities of this age. So here's the Dukeshwana Vignamana. So naturally, miseries or difficulties, mind, body, life, air, the threefold miseries, there's something always coming at you. If your mind remains equipoised, even in the difficulties, he's describing the stita dhi, stita pragya. The key is the stita. Stita means fixed. In what? Krishna consciousness. You can't be moved. And then on the other side, there's always two sides. Sukeshu vigataspaha. When the allurements of Maya are attempting to enjoy, distracting your mind, vigataspaha, you have no desire for it. The only way to do that, obviously, is if it's not so obvious unless you experience Krishna consciousness a little bit, is to cultivate the desire to serve Krishna and experience the pleasure of serving Krishna, which negates all these lower pleasures. That's the verse I chanted this morning. Yat pada pankaja palasa balasa bhakti karma shayam gutitam udgutiyanti santa. Pada pankaja palasa balasa. So, you know what pada pankaja means? What does it mean? You don't know. Anyone can guess? Pada pankaja. Yeah. Pada is feet. Pankaja is that which grows from the mud at the bottom of a lake or a river. And it's one of the many words. I once counted them, 28 words for lotus in the Sanskrit. That's at least that I could find right away in the dictionary. So pada pankaja palasa. So if you got a lotus flower, then you have the petals, right? So you have the lotus feet and the petals are the toes. So by the pleasure that comes from serving with love, the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord, intimate, Vilasa, bhaktya, with devotion. Karmashayam goditam udgutiyanti. Karmashaya means the aspiration for fruit of desire, fruit of results. Asha pasha. We say it every morning. Our aspiration is to serve Radha and Krishna. We sing to Tulsi. So it's karmashayam. These are all the many desires in the heart. They're like knots. Gratitam udgutiyanti. They're untied or cut. You see, for the santa, for the devotee. On the other hand, he's contrasting the jnanis, the yogis, the speculators, whose minds are empty of bhakti. Tadvan na rikta matayo. Rikta matayo means minds empty of bhakti. Yatayo, they're striving to stay detached, but they're eventually overwhelmed by the desire for enjoyment in this world. So many examples in the Bhagavatam. Saubri Muni, unfortunate soul, He's meditating. He's in Vrindavan, but he's decided to meditate within the Yamuna. He's not, he's not bhakta. It's a sacred river, so he's meditating down in the Yamuna. He's got the power, the yogic power to do that. I don't know, years and years, hundreds of years, thousands of years. And so he made, naturally, he's not meditating on Krishna, so he made friends with the fish. So there's two things happen with that. First of all, he likes the fish. Garuda comes and takes the fish. He took the leader of the fish. So Sabri curses Garuda. You come here again, I say, all underwater. That if he comes again, then you'll die. So that's a curse. So therefore Kaliya knew about it. That's why he took shelter of the Yamuna, because he had a fight with Garuda, and Garuda was going to kill him. So that's one thing. But the other thing was that he, inevitably he's under the water there, and he saw these couple of fish copulating, and he lost it. How pathetic could that be, In other words, he wasn't meditating on Krishna. So he comes out of the water after all those years, and you know how it is. I remember when I was a kid, take a bath and you stay in the water real long, and your hands get a little bit wrinkly, So he's been in the water for years. So he's old, plus he's all wrinkled, So he wants to get married. He approaches some king. He says, "Give me one of your daughters." He has many daughters. So the king he's got it. This is difficult because this is a powerful yogi. So he says, "Oh, certainly, I'll just ask any of them to choose you, and whichever one does, you can marry her." So Sabri Muni says, "Okay, so obviously none of them are going to choose me because I'm all wrinkled and old." So by his, I just heard the story, probably told it on a tape. So he makes himself the most attractive young man. You can do that. The yogi is shape changing. So all of them wanted to marry him. So he has like, I think he had 50 daughters or something. So now he has 50. Suddenly he has 50 wives. So Prabhupada says, so after some time of enjoying, he says, boy, what a fall down this has been, as a yogi, So again, he takes sannyas and goes off. But that's the perfect example of not meeting this qualification. Sukeshu vigataspaha. He wasn't seated there because he wasn't really a devotee. He wasn't tasting the nectar. He was riktamatayo. His mind was empty of Rittavamodiyo Shrotoganastamanaram Bhajabasudevam. So eventually anyone else, what to speak of the gross materialists, they don't even want to, give up the happiness. Unfortunately, you can't take one side of the coin. If you're always trying to enjoy material happiness, then you're going to really be in pain for the material miseries when they come. Or vitaraga bhayakro. The miseries aren't here yet, but you're afraid they're coming. Maybe they're coming. Let me buy some insurance. So that's the whole thing. And so exactly opposite. So you're seeing vitaraga bhayakro. This phrase comes up, I think, 3 times in the Gita. So vita means free of raga, material attachment, bhaya, fear, and krodha, anger. They all go together. In the 4th chapter, there's a very illuminating verse, text 10. You can get a chance to, maybe you can look ahead. Where Krishna says, many souls in the past have become purified and become free by Krishna consciousness and become free of raga, bhaya, and krodha. And they've attained to my nature and go back to Godhead. In that purport, Prabhupada explains how each one of these, raga, bhaya, and krodha, obstructs a different category of materialists from taking shelter of Krishna. For most people, the vast majority of people, it's just raga. They're just attached to material sense gratification. And it becomes an addiction. They become used to a certain set of it. Then if they can't enjoy it, which they never can to their full desire, they become depressed or angry or try to, it's just a syndrome that goes on. And the idea, the mode of passion and ignorance becomes prominent. And the very idea of self-realization, asking the most important questions you can ask, who am I, what is the source of everything, doesn't even enter. It's just not part of the whole thing. You become like an animal. So that's raga, most people. Bhaya, fear, is the impersonalists. What's all this, for devotees, it's like, why would anyone be interested in that? Merging into Brahman, no Krishna, no name, no kirtan, no prasadam, no devotees, just I am that I am. I'm pure consciousness. Free! I'm free of all miseries. No birth, no death, no diseases for me. I'm just existing here. But it's all no. What is it? There's no activity. And the soul is by nature active and has senses and wants to engage in loving affection with others, and so that doesn't work. But they're afraid because there's this phrase in English, you may not know it, called throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Have you ever heard of that? Yeah. So the baby is your spiritual identity. We have a form, we have activities, we have emotions, all spiritual in relation to Krishna. The bathwater are all the miseries and difficulties that comes with having a material body. So the impersonalists, the Mayavadis, they confuse having a form and activities with having a material form. So they don't want to know about, Krishna's it's just a statue. They have a hellish mentality. And this ordinary food, and Hare Krishna is just an ordinary sound. What's you're just deluding yourself, But they're deluding themselves. So out of fear of having a form again, because their only experience of a form is this miserable material form, they throw that out. And as far as the krodha comes, that's anger. Prabhupada describes it's like having been cheated so much with so many different false philosophies. You come out the idea nothing is true. Voidism is kind of a Buddhist thing. The ultimate reality is void. None of us really exist. And in that voidness, we'll experience nirvana. No emotions, no nothing, no thoughts. It's very close to Mayavad. But they say there is something, Brahman. Ultimately, the high Buddhists, the philosophical Buddhists, they say ultimately there's nothing in void. So all of those are disqualified themselves from being bhaktas. So we have to give up raga, bhaya, and krodha by engaging in devotional service. And then we become truly fixed, and all these qualities will be there in the pure devotees. Prabhupada mentions that in these purports, that he's describing a very high, pure devotee here. All right, should we go on and let's do some questions? All right. Actually, I just wanted to deal with some of these verses Prabhupada quotes, because the idea of the Muni, Stita Deya Muni. So he says, in Muni one can agitate his mind. So this verse is from the Mahabharata. What is really? What does he say? Yeah. But he quotes Nasa Vrishir Yasamatam Nabindam. You see that near the beginning of the purport. So that's the second line. It says Tarko Pratishta Shutiho Vibinna Nasa Vrishir Yasamatam Nabinnam Dharma Sitatvam Nihitam Gohayam Mahajano Yena Gata Sapanta. So it's a really important verse. So he's saying Mahajano Yena Gata Sapanta. Dharma. How can you find out the truth of Dharma? What is real Dharma? That's what the point is. So you think, well, I'll go to the rishis. But the rishis are all different from each other. You can't be a real rishi unless you have a new philosophy. Just like we have our Western philosophers, some names stick out. You've got the Platonics, you got the Socrates and Plato and all that. And then you come forward and you got these European philosophers, Kierkegaard and Heidegger and Hegel, and Marx is in there, And Prabhupada, he had a series of conversations, So each one of them has something different from the other. There's a school of Hegelians, who follow that, but they basically believe what Hegel believes. When there's something new comes, like Wittgenstein, I remember studying him, and he was all about language. How you can't really figure out because language is changing and the intricacies of language. He was the last one I studied, and I gave it up after that because I wasn't getting close to what I was looking for, which was the absolute truth. So the point is that there's always some new philosophy coming out, and then if you're really good at it, then you become known and you have a school. So that's the idea. He's mentioning all different ways. We're on page 123. Tarko or Pratishta. It's worth going through these. Tarka is material logic and debate. That's Tarka. Apratishta, you never reach a final conclusion. There's always another person who can debate better than you, And so that's you're not going to be able to find the absolute truth that's beyond doubt. And Shuddhi Ovabhinna, even if you study the Vedas on your own, you'll find that they seem to differ from each other. Like right here in the Gita, Krishna is putting down, he's saying, Pushpidam Bacham, the flowery words of the Vedas, they mostly deal with the three modes of nature. The Karma Kanda section, So many people study that, as he said, that they say that's all there is. But he says, no, there's the Upanishads and there's the Gita and all these things and there's Puranas, and they come to the conclusion of the absolute truth. So just studying on your own is not going to work. I went through that stage. I had a little library, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Autobiography of a Yogi, the Be Here Now, of course, which is still being printed. It must be the 50th printing by now. And all of them had something of interest, but none of them had the final word that you could really live your life by, So you need some. So the Shrutis also differ. Nasa Vrishi Yasama, and all of the rishis or munis, they're of a different opinion. Nasa Yasamatam Nabindham. So then it says Dharma Sitatvam, the truth of Dharma, is Nihitam Gohayam, is very secret. It's hidden in the heart, Gohayam, of the devotees. Mahajan, the devotee. Mahajano Yena Gata Sapanta. You can find it by following in the footsteps of the great devotees. That's what this verse is about. So, and then now he quotes his Prashanta Niksemato. This is one of Prabhupada's favorite verses he would often quote. From the Stotra Ratna, from Yamunacharya, it says, Bhavanta meba anutadandarantadak prashanta nikshesa manodatantadak kadahamakantika nitya kinkada paharshi yasyami sanata jivita. It's a prayer for being fixed in the devotional service in the mood of a servant for the Lord. So he's saying, when will I get this state? Kadaham, Bhavanta meva anuchadandarantada. Nirantara means without end. When will I have be on the platform steady service without deviation? And what will be the result? Prashanta. I will get actual peace. Nikshesa manoratantara. What kind of peace? The endless vicissitudes and workings of the mind, which are compared to a chariot of the mind, ratantara, will finally be resolved. My mind will become peaceful. Prashanta nikshesa means without end. Prashanta nikshesa manoratantara. Kadaham. When will that day come? Kadaham aikantika nitya kinkara. I will become your eternal, menial servant. One-pointed, without deviation. Okay? And then be overjoyed. Praharshi yasyami. I will be jubilant. Sanata jivatam. To be able to live with such a wonderful master. Sanata. They say that about ladies who get married. They finally have a husband, right? Sanata, have a husband, So I have a master who we can trust, we love, and be secure. So Prabhupada is quoting one line of that verse here. He's called the Stita Muni, Prashanta Nikshesa Manodatantara. One who has surpassed the stage of mental speculation has come to the conclusion that Krishna is everything. And that's, of course, then he quotes from the 19th chapter, 7th verse, Vasudeva Sarvamiti, but Krishna is everything. So that's the way that you can get to this stage. Here in these verses, he doesn't mention the word bhakti, but it's all understood that that's what he's talking about. By buddhi yoga, bhakti yoga, one reaches this stage here. Okay, this next one is also really important. Yak sarvatrana bisnehas. Sarvatrana bisnehas. Okay, let's try it again. Yak sarvatrana bisnehas. Tat prapya shubhashubham nabanandati nandveshti tasya pragya patishtita. So that's kind of the theme here. Whether it's Stita Muni or Stita Pragya or Pragya Patishtita, it's the same idea of fixed consciousness. Remember Vyavasayatmaka Buddhi. He's actually talking about here. There's one-pointed fixed attention on Krishna. In the material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising it nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. Purport. There is always some upheaval in the material world, which may be good or evil. One who is not agitated by such material upheavals, who is unaffected by good and evil, is to be understood to be fixed in Krishna consciousness. As long as one is in the material world, there is always the possibility of good and evil because the world is full of duality. But one who is fixed in Krishna consciousness is not affected by good and evil because he is simply concerned with Krishna, who is all good absolute. Such consciousness in Krishna situates one in perfect transcendental position called technically samadhi. So it's interesting because anabhisneha, without affection, Prabhupada would use this word affection in an unusual way because affection means a kind of love or an attachment. But it also means being affected. That you'll find that meaning in the dictionary. It's not common, but it's in. So he's using it here. But it also has the other meaning here. Not having too much affection or attachment to anything in this world. That's what sarvatra means everywhere. Anabhisneha. To be careful not to repose. Just like the perfect example is Bharat Maharaj, who really rose up the Bhava plane. He's meditating on Krishna and out in the forest. He gave up. As a young man, he gave up his kingdom. He was king of the earth. His young wife and children and everything, as the verse describes. Just as you leave the tree after doing your business. Wow. So then he goes off and meditate. The story. There was a little fawn who became without a mother. The mother died out of fright from a lion. And so the fawn doesn't know anyone but him as a father. So what kind of Vaishnava would not, take the fawn and give him a little milk, So naturally the fawn became totally attached to him, and he became attached to the fawn. He's meditating, the fawn is nibbling on his ear, when are you going to feed me my milk or whatever, So he became distracted, became a deer in his next life, So this is, the reason why he didn't have any association. He was doing it all on his own, That's described. So not to be too much, not to be affected. Nabhinanti nadveshti. Prabha shubha ashubham. When you get auspicious things, don't get overwhelmed and overjoyed too much. And when bad things happen, don't get so disturbed. It's a theme here in these verses. Na abhinandati na dveshti. Don't hate the ashubha, and don't go wild praising the shubha. That's what he's saying here. And meanwhile, don't get too much affection for anyone or anything in this world. Then you can have fixed consciousness. Okay, one more now. He gives a nice analogy here of the tortoise or the turtle. I once looked it up. The tortoise is land dwelling, right? And the turtle is in water. I think there's turtles. These are turtles. Yada sangharate chayam kurmongani visarvashaha indriyan indriyartebhyas tasya pragya patishtita. One who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects, as the tortoise draws his limbs within the shell, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. The test of a yogi, devotee, or self-realized soul is that he is able to control the senses according to his plan. Most people, however, are servants of the senses and are thus directed by the dictation of the senses. That is the answer to the question as to how the yogi is situated. Remember, he says, how does he sit, how does he walk, how does he talk? The senses are compared to venomous serpents. They want to act very loosely and without restriction. The yogi or the devotee must be very strong to control the serpents, like a snake charmer. He never allows them to act independently. There are many injunctions in the revealed scriptures. Some of them are do-nots, and some of them are do's. This is Bhajan Rama's famous donuts. It's like this reminds me of a joke my father told me about jokes. Where these two friends, they would tell each other the same jokes again and again. So they gave him numbers. This is joke number 31 and so forth. So after a while, the joke about joke. So after a while, they wouldn't even have to tell the jokes to each other. They just give the numbers. Number 31. 31. I remember that. So it's like that with Maharaj's stories. Donuts. The whole thing comes in. Donuts. All right. So do nots and do's. Unless one is able to follow the do's and the do-nots, restricting oneself from sense enjoyment, it is not possible to be firmly fixed in Krishna consciousness. The best example set herein is the tortoise. The tortoise can at any moment wind up its senses and exhibit them again at any time for particular purposes. Similarly, the senses of the Krishna conscious persons are used only for some particular purpose in the service of the Lord and are withdrawn otherwise. Arjuna is being taught here to use his senses for the service of the Lord instead of for his own satisfaction. Keeping the senses always in the service of the Lord is the example set by the analogy of the tortoise who keeps the senses within. So this phrase, indriyan indriyartebhyas, comes up several times, to be able to withdraw the senses from their sense objects. You see that? But Prabhupada refers here to a verse which comes up later in more detail, how the senses are compared to venomous serpents. Does anyone recognize the verse? It's number 33. No? I'm just kidding. This is the verse by Prabodhananda Saraswati in the Chaitanya Chandramrita. It's quoted, I think, later, or at least Prabhupada gives this detailed description in a purport. So what he's describing there, and this is really universal, is that for one who is empowered by the sidelong glance of Lord Chaitanya, in other words, one who is fixed in Krishna consciousness in Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta, these benefits accrue. And he gives a list there in this verse. Kaivalyam natakayate, tujasapur akasha pushpayate, durdantende yakada sarvapatali protkata dangstrayate, vishwam purna sukhayate, vidimahinda jistakitayate, yat karunya kataksha vaibhavavatam tam goldaname vastamak. I praise that golden avatar, Lord Chaitanya. So the first one is Kaivalyam natakayate. Does it ring a bell at all? Kaival. Naraka means hell. And Kaivalya is a word that means like merging into the oneness and of Brahman. For a devotee, that's hell. For the impersonalists, that's the final goal. They think it's the final goal. But for a devotee, it's hell. Why? Because there's no bhakti. For bhakti, you need three things. You need the bhakta, you need Bhagavan, and you need the bhakti in the exchange. But in Brahman, there's no Bhagavan. There's just a white light. you've also lost your identity. You're just a particle of spirit. So where's the bhakti? So the devotee says, no thank you. That's narakayati. Tridashapur akasha pushpayati. And the 30 or 33 million different heavenly planets and all that allurement, he says, it's no more real for the devotee than the sky flower. Have you seen any sky flowers lately? Just an imagination. It's the horn of a rabbit, In other words, they don't exist. Doesn't exist. Forget it. And then comes the thing about the senses. Durdantendriya, difficult to control senses, which are like kala sarpa, which will bite you. If they control it, they'll poison your consciousness. Kala sarpa patali protkata dangstrayate. They have their fangs removed. You may have a big cobra, but he opens his mouth and he's got no teeth, and you just laugh at him. He thinks he's threatening you, but there's nothing there. So similarly, the senses, when they're engaged fully in Krishna's service, the same eyes are there, the same tongue is there, the same everything is there. But they can't take your consciousness away because they're engaged in Krishna's service. In fact, they become a paraphernalia for serving Krishna. It's like Prabhupada, with his voice. I mean, the devotee's most important sense is the voice and the ear. The knowledge acquiring ear and active voice. He used it, incredibly, efficiently and wonderfully for glorifying Krishna. And we can do the same thing when we chant Hare Krishna. So, but the voice can get you in a lot of trouble, if you're just speaking Prajalpa, and dangerous. But to speak the tongue, you can take you to hell, or you can taste prasadam, So it's just a question of directing and different. So they're like, the same senses are there, but they can't bite you. They can't hurt you. And then he says, Vishwang Purna Sukhayate. The whole universe is filled with joy. Now Krishna said, Dukkali Mashashratam. The whole universe is a place of misery. But for the devotee, he sees the pastimes of Krishna everywhere. If you see Krishna everywhere and you have this love for Krishna, you're never separated from your beloved. And there's all the varieties of activity that you have. It's happiness. It's not dependent on age or anything else. Even if you're, blind, like Bilvamadha Thakur was blind, but he saw Krishna everywhere. So many of his verses, he's coming. Tadidamopanatam tamalanidam tadadabirochana tarkaviramam. This is a verse from the Karnamrita. Here he is, he's coming. Tadidamopanatam, he's approaching me. Tamala Neelam, like the complexion of a tamalchi. Tadada Vilochana Tarakaviram. His eyes are moving this way and that. I got a little story to tell, but I can't resist. You remember, maybe you remember here, Vishnu Maharaj the elder, that old Indian gentleman? No? He used to visit here. I think before he even took sannyas, he was coming. I met him before he was elderly, but he hadn't taken sannyas yet. He was actually a disciple of Shivaram Swami. And so I met him on a prasadam line in Vrindavan. We're both like waiting our turn, to get a prasadam. And so I asked him, as I would many others then and now, would you like to hear a nice verse? He said, yeah. He pulls out a little pad, which no one else ever did. He wants to take notes. So he's serious. I forget the verse I gave him, but he gave me a nice verse, which I'll share with you some other time. But then later on, he was coming and he took sannyas, and then it was kind of, he wanted to have some disciples, and people wanted to take initiation, but there was a little glitch that he wasn't a proper disciple. He was a disciple of Shivaram Swami. He had to get the okay, which he eventually got. But he was kind of already giving names to his servants and things, So he had this servant named Tarala Vilochana, which is kind of a name or description of Krishna, whose eyes dance like Kanjana birds. He's looking at all the cows and the devotees. This is one of his attractive. So I said, Maharaj, that's in the verse. He said, what's the verse? I gave him this verse. Tadidamapanatam tamalalidam tadadabarochana tadakabhiramam. And his eyes are like the stars. The pupils are like stars. Tadakabhiramam. Mudita mudita vakta chanda bimbam mukudata venu vilasa jivitam. Mudita is a very, very joyful face, a smiling face. Like the full moon, Chanda bimbam. Mukudata venu vilasi. He's holding that flute to his lips and playing it very playfully, He's my very life and soul, jivatam me. He really liked that verse. So that's, I don't know how we got on that. Oh yeah, everything is full of joy. Vishwam Purnasaka. And then, this is typical for Bodhananda. Vidhi Mahendra Adishtakitayate. For the devotee, now it's not that he doesn't respect the demigods, but we really don't want anything from them. We don't spend much time on them, So in this case, Vidhi Mahendra means Brahma and Indra, etc. Kitayate, no more significant him than insects. And then he says, who has this vision? Who has this experience? One who has been empowered by the merciful sidelong glance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It is that moon-like Lord Chaitanya who I worship. So that's the verse that Prabhupada is referring to here about the venomous serpents, which he explains in another purport in more detail. Okay, I picked out a little verse, unless there's some discussion on these points. We'll continue. We're coming up on a really important verse, 59, on Monday, Vishayavani Vartante. You can try to give up, the Vishayas, but unless you get the higher taste, it won't last. So, that's the yeah, go ahead. No, yeah.
A city or province in the Philippines, and it's named Visaya.
His name is?
Visaya or Vishaya?
Vishaya? It must be something else. That's a devotee's name?
No, it's a city.
Oh, a city. Oh, in the Philippines. Okay. All right, let's see if I can share you with this. We have two or 3 minutes here. So this is the verse. This is another one that you should memorize, Alex. You'll like this one. This is in Anja 3, 181 in the CC. It's about the holy name. Haridas Thakur shared it. It's also included in a Pajavali. Anghak sang hadadakilang. You know this one? Anghak sang hadadakilang sakudodiha deva sakalalokasya tadadidivatamal jalading tayachitagamangalang hare nama. And I won't give you the meaning, because what happened is that this verse was chanted in a conclave, a meeting about the holy name, with Raghunath Das Goswami there. Before he was a Swami, he was just a boy, maybe 14 years old, And he was there, and his father was there, and his uncle was there. They're getting the advantage of Haridas Thakur's association. So this verse he gives by way of explaining how just once chanting a holy name purely gets rid of all your karma, and gives you liberation. So there was a smarta Brahmin there, a kind of a official Brahmin, who was a tax collector for them. And he said, that can't be true, and if it's not true, I'll cut off your nose. He threatened. So Haridas Thakur laughed, and everyone else was aghast, and they fired him, they kicked him out. And so they asked Haridas Thakur to explain how that's true, and he quoted this verse and he gave an explanation. So my little poem here includes the explanation as well as the definition. When the moon is invisible, now imagine there's no electricity, and so when it gets dark, if it's a new moon, it gets really dark. When the moon is invisible, withered to nil, and the sun is long gone from the sky, then an ocean of darkness envelops this world, and the timorous fear they might die. The word timorous means easily frightened. And the timorous fear they might die. But that thick pall of gloom is at once swept away when the first signs of sunrise appear, and the dawning of day gives assurance to all that in truth there is nothing to fear. In a similar way, when illusion holds sway and the soul has forgotten his Lord, then the darkness of ignorance covers his heart. Sin and suffering are his reward. But as soon as he chants Krishna's name even once in a manner that doesn't offend, then his ignorance flees like the darkness at dawn, and his sin and his suffering end. So there's nothing to fear, for the sun of the name has appeared with his powers divine. In your heart may that sun, benedictive for all, become fixed and eternally shine. And that goes for you in internet land also. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Hare. Someone made a song out of that, by the way, one time.